You know, Eugene Peterson uses this phrase, a long obedience in the same direction. A long obedience in the same direction. I've only recently met Marion personally. I've heard his name invoked for many years from many people, including my college and seminary roommate, Tom Wall, who's a fellow South Carolinian who's taken many groups to Rio. And everyone I know who has met Marion has come away and said, there's this palpable sanctity in this person. It's not showy, it's humble, caring. On our end, we know why this is wonderful, and I don't think anybody who's been there is under any illusion that we've gone there down there and have done anything that was great. But we all come back and say we have been transformed by this experience of being there. On your end, what is it like to have, and exclude Lindsley because she's so slick with Portuguese, but you know the rest of us, what's it like to have like people like us come there?
It's marvelous. That's one reason we have stayed on, especially during retirement, because we felt like we were in a special position with contacts here and contacts there, and that we've had, this has been sort of one of our missions to help serve these groups who serve us so much. Not just all of the physical things, the building that has my Spark name on it, but especially your contacts with the people. They still remember. Just your personal contacts are just as important as your banging a nail or with a paintbrush. And it means so much to these kids, because most of them come from broken homes. Most are single parent. Not too many of them have a stable father. And just to have some of these older boys and men out there playing with them and throwing them up in the air, and it's just, they always wonder, when are they coming back? When are they coming back?
Yes, I now have Facebook friends in Rio. One of them is named Cassius, and he sends me a Facebook message, and it begins with something like, "Hello, how are you?" And then he says, "Now I'm going to speak in Portuguese." All right, Alisa, what would you want to ask him? When you see something like this?
At my young age, I'm awed to hear you say that you've never questioned. Because there's already days I think, I don't know how to do this, God.
No, I didn't say that. I mean, I mean, there have been many times when well, what are we going to do? And the answer doesn't always just come down in a clap of lightning. And sometimes you start out in the wrong direction, and then you realize, but in the end, God has been leading us. I was very interested in the work that you're doing, which is in many ways similar to things that we're doing.
Well, can I tell one quick story? Because I haven't told Marion this, but I'll be 3 minutes. I've told Lindsley this. We'd been there a month. I'd been there a month at the church in D.C. And Sergio, who is an incredible man in Rio, who all of us who've been there have met, who literally was homeless at 4 on the streets, begging for food for his 2-year-old little sister, and got to know the ways. Really, Anita is who I think he claims drew him in, and became a part of the mission, and is now in his 30s, and by thanks of a lot of people, but including people in this church, has finished his social work degree and is working at the mission. So you all helped bring a couple of young adults, including Sergio, here in 2008, and they wanted to see DC. So I said, well, Lindsley, send them up and they can stay in the parsonage. I've been there literally a month, and I realized that we had poor folk that we fed, and then we, as fairly affluent folk, would worship and study together. And I thought, no, this has to be together. We have to eat together, and we have to study together, and that's how it's got to be, because we live in the same space. So Sergio comes, and I just ask him to speak and tell his story. And I guess now I didn't know it. It was the first time that guys on the street had been invited into one of our teaching sessions. And I just said, hey, I think you guys will find this interesting. And George, who reads a lot, has been on the street for 30 years, said, I've read about street children in Rio. I'd love to hear it. So 3 guys come in, and Sergio tells his story, translated from Portuguese. And when he finishes, one of the guys living on the street, Raul, says, but that's my story. And they start going back and forth, Sergio and Raul, about what it means to live on the street, and when the church shows up and when the church fails to show up. And my people were silent. I mean, they were silent. And afterwards they left, and then another guy goes, well, that's my story. That's not my story. I've had every opportunity in the world, and I've just pissed them all away. And so there just becomes this incredible conversation of folks who've lived on the street in Rio and folks who've lived on the street in D.C. And my folks were just spectators in some ways. But as they left, one woman said to me, I step over the wisdom that's on our steps, but I'll make time because I think someone from Rio who's been on the streets can teach me something. And it was just the most amazing thing. I mean, it busted open our ministry, Marion, without a doubt. And I think that's the thing, is that when someone faithfully works for 50 years, the seeds of that ministry, we just have no idea where they'll go. But a lot of what we're doing has to do with Sergio being there. I mean, the Spirit may have found another way to do that, but that was the way. I mean, it's just incredible.
I think last question, because I know a lot of you would like to come up and speak to these folks. Marion, how old are you?
Well, I'm
not going to ask you how much you weigh.
Yeah, well, I weigh 170.
7 more and you'll catch up with me.
I'll be 80 in December.
I'll be 80 in December.
And Anita will be... And I'll tell you a secret. Anita will be 79 in December.
Much younger bride. Here's the reason I asked her a question for one reason. I asked that question for a different reason, which is this, and not to nag, but it's just something to think about. Some of us were talking about this the other day, that in church we rely so much on people that are like ridiculously busy in their lives. And we were talking the other day, I was with the pastors of the 100 largest churches. We had a big meeting in Utah, big churches, pastors. I felt really small in this gathering. And one of the things we talked about is, who are the people in our churches who have the most time and the most wisdom and the most experience? And it's not your age, sorry. And it's not even my age. It's the people that are drawing a beat on 80. The church has a mandatory retirement age, and it's not almost 80. It's earlier than that. But as best we can tell, Marion has not retired. He keeps doing what he's doing. Just a reminder to all of us that, there's not some clock on this. Those of us who are pastors, one of the worst things that just drives us crazy when people say, well, I put in my time, have some younger people do it. You get Abraham. How old was Abraham when he got going good? Is old, I have one more slide to show you, and then we'll be done. This is from Graham Greene's novel, The Power and the Glory, and it comes right at the end. And it's about a man who lives his life, and at the end of his life, he actually has a lot of regrets. And here's the way Greene describes it. He felt only an immense disappointment because he had to go to God empty-handed, with nothing done at all. It seemed to him at that moment that it would have been quite easy to have been a saint. It would only have needed a little self-restraint and a little courage. He felt like someone who had missed happiness by seconds at an appointed place. He knew now that at the end there was only one thing that counted. That was to be a saint. It has been our privilege tonight to talk to 2 people who are not stunningly amazing in natural giftedness or whatever. They're people who've had a little self-restraint and a little courage. And for that we give thanks to God. Join me in thanking them for coming.
Thank you, sir.